There are many great women in the Bible, many who are worthy of note. The woman with the issue of blood, she believed so strongly in the power of Jesus that she only needed to touch the hem of his garment. Ruth the Moabite, she stood in faith and followed God despite everything life had thrown at her. And then there's Deborah, one of the most influential women in the Bible, known for her courage and wisdom. But there's one woman who I'd like to pay close attention to. Like the woman with the issue of blood, she too is unnamed. But our God is a good God, and whether your name is known or unknown, God still sees you. This woman is the Shunammite woman. She's introduced in 2 Kings chapter 4. The prophet Elisha is on his way to Shunem. And so this isn't the first time she has seen Elisha, but in verse 9, the Bible says, "And she said to her husband, 'Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Let us make a small upper room on the wall and put a bed for him there, so whenever he comes to us, he can rest.'" There are lessons to be learned from this woman. Her desire was to minister to the man of God Elisha, and so pure were her intentions to serve God that she did go ahead and accommodate Elisha. And he was so moved that he wanted to know how God could bless this woman and what she wanted.
She constrained him, the Bible said. She constrained him. And finally, he stops. He's on the road of Shunem going to Carmel. But here's a woman who recognizes a man of God, recognizes the work of God, and says, "I want you to receive what I have. I want to be a blessing to you." And she comes to her husband. She says, "You know what? Now that we've had a chance to eat with him, now that we've had a chance to meet him, now that we've had the chance to get to know him a little bit, I perceive." This is another thing that made her great. "I perceive this is a man of God." Not only was she a giver, she was discerning. You need to be a discerning people in this hour and in this day. If you want to be like that great woman, you're going to have to be able to discern the difference between what is spiritual, what is carnal, what is fleshly, what is devilish, and what is of God. This woman was willing to say, "God, just show me what is of God and I'll support that." And she said to her husband, "You know what? I perceive that this man is a man of God." The man of God receives the blessing, and one day he's lying there in the room and he says to Gehazi, "Go get that Shunammite woman." And it's interesting in the text that he doesn't really talk to her directly. He talks to her through Gehazi. And she's standing at the door and he says, "Ask her what she needs."
The Shunammite woman was blessed with a son, and as the years go by, her and her husband enjoy their only child, God's gift to them. A child that reminded them of God's goodness and faithfulness. A child that symbolized a blessing in their life. But one day, life, as life so often does, sent a challenge. Tragedy struck their household. The son whom God had given them, he died.
And everything in her goes, "No. No. No." She shakes him to see if he's shaking, or see if he could be revived. She shakes him. Tears begin to roll. Blackness begins to envelop her mind. Her heart is up into her throat. She gets dizzy all over. What do? A promise. Blessing I didn't ask for. It's dead. Something I never thought I'd ever have, that I always wanted, and now it's dead. What am I? But something on the inside of her said, "It's not over. I didn't ask for this. I didn't work for this. God gave me this. And if God gave me this. I don't believe that God would let it just die. See, when something supernatural is given, it will be supported by the supernatural faith that is not accompanied when we lose things we've worked for. When it doesn't come this way, when it's something that you did, but when it's something that God did, even when it looks like it's dead, you can expect God to do what's unexpected. You can expect the impossible. I can't explain it, but I've had it. That gift of faith that looks dead right in the eye and says, dead will live again. That looks dead right in the eye and says, that debt is not taking me over. It's not taking me under. It's not destroying my ministry. It's not, how do you know? I don't know. It looks dead to me, but something on the inside of me, something on the inside of this Shunammite woman would not let go of the blessing, would not let go of the purpose, would not let go of the promise.
Now what? What do you do? What do you do when the gift God has given you looks to be dead? When the blessing God has given you looks to have run out? God, why? Why? We took in Elisha. We are your servants. We've built him a room to rest. We've done this all for you. God, why? But this woman, she didn't ask those questions or say those things. In verse 21 in chapter 4 says, and she went up and laid him in the bed of the man of God and shut the door behind him and went out. When her husband asked what's wrong, part B in verse 26 says, she answered saying, all is well. When Gehazi, Elijah's servant, saw her, he asked, is everything okay? She answered, all is well.
It is well. See, nobody else will understand what you've got to go through. Nobody else can get where you are. No one else can stand in your shoes and take your place. You've got to say, it is well. It is well. Because sometimes when you tell your husband and you tell your wife what God has said, they say, let's just go have a funeral. Let's just go bury it. Let's just go forget it. Job's wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? But something inside her said, it is well. It is well. It is well.
Until she got to Elisha, the Bible says, she caught hold of his feet and questioned the man of God. Elisha then instructs his servant with what looks to be her answer. Go and lay my staff on the face of the child. But the Shunammite woman's child did not awake. Then Elisha himself had to go. And so Elisha went. And when he got there, the Bible says he shut the door and began to pray. He prayed until the child came back to life.
There are several lessons to be learned here. This woman had the spirit of discernment. She discerned that Elisha was a true man of God. Once she discerned this, the Shunammite woman was hospitable to God's servant. She respected the person whom God had chosen to use. She accommodated and she enabled the work of God to be done. Third, she was influential to her husband. After she discerned, but before she acted to accommodate Elisha, she spoke to her husband first. Verse 9 in 2 Kings chapter 4 says, and she said to her husband, look now, I know that this is a holy man of God. She got her house in order first. She explained what she saw to her husband so that they might be in unity and of the same spirit.
Fourth, even in the face of trouble, a mother who had just lost her only son, a son who was a blessing to her, a son whom she would have cherished, oh, so much considering the circumstances of his birth, that son died. But she didn't curse God. She didn't turn her back on God or rebel. She simply had the faith and strength to say, all is well. All is well. Why? Because she knew the God she served would have purpose to her pain. There was a bigger blessing in the storm. She walked by faith and not by natural sight. So when her child appeared dead, she went back to God with the eyes of faith. When her situation looked impossible, she went to God with the eyes of faith. When others would have been saying, let's make arrangements to bury him, she went to God with the eyes of faith. And finally, she was bold. She acted in boldness by seeking God with a dead son. She acted in boldness by saying, all is well.
Some of you are on a journey right now between Shunem and Carmel. Wait a minute. I got good news. You're not headed to Carmel. You're not looking for Elisha. You're headed to Calvary. Hey! You're headed to Calvary because you don't need a prophet. You don't need a preacher. The only one that can fix your problem is a man with nail prints in his hands. The only one that can do for you what you need done is not your preacher. It's not your psychologist. It's not your doctor. And it's not your friend. You gotta get to Calvary. You gotta get to Calvary. You gotta get to Calvary. Why? Because right there, Jesus paid for everything that you need. Your faith has to make a journey from Shunem, the place of rest, to Calvary, the place of the cross. And man, you got to have the same attitude. I don't care what they say. I don't care how they talk about me. I'm going to the cross. I believe the answer's in the cross. Go ahead and beat that donkey, and don't you stop. I don't care what they think of me. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what they say about me. I'm going to the cross. I know the answer is there. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to desist. Something inside of me says, if I could just touch Calvary, my problem will be resolved. If I can just get to Calvary, my issue is going to be handled if I can just believe that what Jesus did at Calvary.
So be inspired by this woman in the Bible. Trials may come, but God is still faithful and good. Your blessing might look to have run out, but God has a bigger blessing on the way. It may seem as though your provision has run out, but in the nick of time, God will make a way. In everything you do, trust God, and trust God first.
you